right. Hey, crew. So I am with Chino, my friend Chino. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I really
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it. Crew, as you know, I have been doing a series on fatherhood. So I am highlighting amazing fathers that I know, and Chino being one. I do plan to just hear more about your story and how you are just an amazing father overall. So, yeah. Thank you so much, like I said before, for having this conversation with me. Uh, Crew, also, you know that Father's Day is coming up. So, hence why I am having these conversations. I feel like a lot of times, men, Black men, Hispanic men, they're not put in the best light on media, television, social media. And so thanks, like I said before, thanks to social media and the different platforms that we do have, we get to create our own narratives. And so, yeah, I want to highlight Black men, Hispanic men. I want to highlight men, period, because there are some good fathers out there. And so
That's right.
I appreciate that. So, one of my first questions, what was your relationship like with your father growing up?
So my relationship with my dad, um, it was like a roller coaster, right? So that sounds kind of cliche. So the reason why I say that is because my relationship was like it was in phases. So the first 10 years, it was phenomenal.
Mm.
Like my dad was the dad who picked me up on the weekends. Just to give you some context, my mother, and my father, they were divorced.
Mhm.
I think I was a few months old when they were like separated. Not sure if they were legally married, but they were separated. So the first 9, 10 years, man, my dad was everything to me. He picked me up on the weekends. He took me to Six Flags Great Adventure. He took me to baseball games. I mean, it was, I look forward to every weekend.
Mm-hmm. So you said 1 through 10?
So
Well,
yeah, so
first to
one
10.
through 10, yep.
Yeah.
And then once my mother passed away in 1989, I was 10 years old, and I went to live with my dad. And from that moment on, it was just a different world to me. They were structured. My father is a man of structure, and I didn't have that my first 9 years. So, and I didn't, my dad was, being that my mom passed away, I don't think my father really knew how to raise a young kid who spent most of his time in the street and most of his time with his mom. I don't think my dad really understood how to raise a child who just lost his mom.
Yeah.
And my father was newly married, freshly married, just got married within that time frame as well.
Mhm.
So when I came into their world, I came in with a lot of dysfunction. I mean, I'm not even sure if that's probably the right word to use. I was 10, right? So just
Right.
but so from that moment all the way from 10 into my teenage years, it wasn't good. I mean, I,
It wasn't.
I don't remember good. I mean, my father was a giver, he's a great man, but I just don't remember him meeting the need, like that emotional need. So
Right.
before I go off on a tangent, I'll
No,
stop.
like you said, I don't. You said he might not have had the tools. He didn't
Yeah,
have to. Uh, yeah, it was kind of like it might have been unexpected, right? I don't want to use the word thrust, but it was your mom was here, and so now there's a change that's happening for both you and him.
yeah,
Kind of adjust to, I always say there's no guide for parenting. So you're kind of while you're figuring it out, he's figuring it out.
exactly.
Right? There's gonna be some mistakes, but you mentioned structure, and I was telling somebody else that I had a conversation with that um, from when children don't have structure, and then they go to a place where there is, it's gonna be like what is it? I can't find the word, but it's adjusting. I'm gonna just say that there's some adjustment
Yeah.
that has to take place. I recently another second grade class joined my class, and the other second grade class, they when they came to my class, it was different. It's like, oh, so you guys do things a certain way, right? And every class does things a certain way, but I would just say it was a little bit more structure in my class, and he didn't like it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
didn't.
I didn't like it. I
Right.
didn't like it. I let him know I didn't like it. So I was, just misbehaving and obviously going through such a tragic moment, not being able to speak about it, just being used to having my mom around.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden not having her around and not speaking about it, just kind of like, all right, you now live here. It wasn't conducive to my growth nor to the relationship that me and him had. So throughout my teenage years, I mean, there were years that I think we went 2 years without even speaking to each other, him not speaking to me not speaking to him in the
While
same
living,
household.
right. You just answered it. While
In
living.
the same household. And I just got to a place where I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just done with this. And I left at 16 years old.
Wow.
So after 16, we saw each other sporadically. And again, we didn't have a good relationship. So I saw him when I saw him. And our relationship didn't turn around all the way up until about 3 years, 3 years ago. Maybe 2 years ago, right before the pandemic started. So 2019.
That's a long time to be out of touch and out of not speaking.
Yeah. So insane time.
Wow. So you have two sons now.
I do. Two
Right.
teenage boys.
Two teenage boys, and we'll get to how your relationship with your dad is today. But how has that relationship with your father influenced? And the things you went through even as a child, how has it influenced your relationship with your two sons?
I get, no secret, I raised my kids in the church, and I believe like my influence comes from the men around me, the word, and it also comes from my life experience, right? Because you can never leave that part. So the way I think, and what I've tried to do with my boys is I've tried to be open, understanding, and show them unconditional love. Because I grew up, for me, growing up, love was conditional, or it seemed that way. So I remember telling one of my sons, my youngest son, Noah, he's about to be 16. I remember telling him one day, I was like, yo, there's nothing you could ever do or say that's going to make me feel less love for you. Like, you're my son. I love you with everything in me. We were sitting down on the sofa, and he just had he just had a moment. And he felt bad about it, and it was borderline disrespectful with me and his mom. And then he came back and he was apologetic, and I said, man, you're gonna have those days. And then I just had to reinforce that, because growing up I always felt like there were conditions. So the reason, at 16 years old, I decided to leave my house, because I just didn't feel like the love was strong enough to keep. The love didn't keep me there. I didn't feel like that. There was so much more. It appeared as if there was so much more outside of the home, right? And I'm not gonna sit here and say he was just this miserable man or stuff like that, because I didn't help the situation. I just don't think it was my responsibility at that moment. And this may bring up a bigger conversation.
Right.
And there's no, again, my father's just dope, man. And we'll get into that, right?
Yeah.
And but at that time, it just felt conditional. You do this, I make sure I reward you. And I get that in principle and in theory.
Yeah.
But when it comes to my sons, I've made sure that I don't show them that. Like, I show them a lot of affection, because I didn't receive a lot of affection.
And that's the thing, I feel like it's more of showing. So you can say that, but then if you don't show that there is that, okay, if you do this, then I'll do that, right?
Yeah.
That's condition, right? That's condition. If you do this, and like you said, I don't think parents mean to portray it like that, but you just hit it. You said you intentionally, right? Show your children affection. Like, So they'll know like nothing you do is going to change the way I love you.
Exactly.
I feel like if people, if fathers, mothers too, presented it that way, children will be more open to
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, and it allows me to have deep conversations with my kids. You know, it allow and again, you said it. I agree. There's no book on here. This is how you parent. You know, we're both learning. You know, but the responsibility is on me to show them the way, to show them the unconditional love. Again, they're gonna learn the bad things from me too.
Right.
But there's some foundational truths that I believe, which are rooted in the word, like love, that I think have to go across the board. So
yeah, I like that. I like that. So we've talked about you influencing, your children through your relationship. Any other ways that your relationship with your father has influenced your relationship with your sons?
yeah, we talk a lot. I believe, we talk a lot. Like we sit at the table and we have conversations. Sometimes it's about girls, and it's my wife is like, why are you guys talking about this? But they're boys, right? And I have to understand that they are growing boys, so they're going to be girl crazy at some time. So I don't want them to feel like they can't speak to me about how they're feeling,
Right.
about, maybe what they're going through. So I try my very best to just be there for them and help them understand that, hey, I've been where you're at. So when we do speak about girls, it's not like, oh, she's bad, like, yo, you about to bag her. It's not that. It's more like, hey, you make sure you don't lead her on. You make sure like you treat her with, respect as a queen. You make sure that you're a young man of integrity, that if you walk away from that relationship, which you most likely will, you 15, 16, that you could walk away with a clear conscience knowing, like that you've done right. So just those conversations, and I think they've been extremely helpful up until now, because kids make their own decisions at the end of the day.
Yeah, you actually, okay, you're back. I used to tell guys, the same way you want your daughter to be treated, that's how you treat women or treat
That's
me.
it.
I don't think anyone wants their daughter to be treated badly. No. So it's like, think about that and then move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you said something. Right. So you actually answered one of the questions I had. How do you create safe spaces? Like, what does that practically look like? If you had to, if another father had that question for you, like, how do you create that safe space?
Yeah, it's those dinner table moments, right? But some fathers don't have that privilege. So that might be just a ride in the car for a father, because we do, right? There's those dads who are, they're single dads, or maybe there's joint custody. So I don't want to just speak for this, this one mode, right? Because we're living in a world where there's a lot of broken homes. I hate to say that word because it's weird, right? Because just because the mom and the dad aren't together, is it really broken? I mean, that's subjective, but that's a whole nother conversation. But in my as for me, we sit at the dinner table, and we try to be intentional about sitting at the table together as a family at least once, maybe twice. And to be honest, the credit goes to my wife in that area, because she's like, all right, we didn't have dinner together this week. So when we sit at the table, our conversations are extremely intentional. How was your day? How was your week? Hey, yo, you feeling her? Like, this girl seems like she likes you. Like, how's that going? Stuff like that. I mean, because they are kids.
Right. Is it a struggle? Do you have to, I guess, I don't know, with teenagers, I feel like sometimes you have to be very strategic because you don't want them to close down. So
yeah, sometimes it's a struggle. If I ask questions about like Snapchat,
gotcha.
It's a struggle because that's their private place, right? That's that space where you don't know what's going on, right? So sometimes there's some struggle there, and we just, again, it's open dialogue, and I've created that culture within my home.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's important because you do have to create. Yeah, you have to create a culture within that, so the children or your teenage boys or girls will be able to open up. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's a process. I'm only thinking about, I don't have children, but I'm thinking about when I was a teenager. Yeah, there's a certain, I personally think there's a certain way that you have to approach teenagers in order for them to be able to share. Otherwise, the door's closed.
Yeah. 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 It's trust, right? It's because it's trust. Growing up for me, I wasn't taught to treat women with respect. And I don't say that to bash before my dad, like my uncles and stuff like that. But I grew up in a time and around a group of individuals who they didn't treat women with respect. And, and I make sure like that when I'm around, I'm with my boys, I show them like, hey, I'm lovey-dovey with their mom. And, when I maybe raise my voice or I say something that's out of pocket, I'm like, yo, guys, like, that's not cool. Like, dads shouldn't speak to their mom like that. And I learned that from my pastor. I learned that from Pastor Ken. Long story short.
Shout out to Pastor Ken.
Shout out to Pastor Ken. Yeah. Long story short, 16 years ago, I was, just moved out to Staten Island. And, I shared earlier, my mom had passed away. So it's funny because we had one cell phone back then. We just moved to Staten Island. I lost my job. We didn't know anybody in Staten Island. We've born and raised in Brooklyn, but I wanted to raise my family in Staten Island. Not only that, my church was in Staten Island. I just gave my heart to the Lord. So I'm on fire for Jesus, but I still have a lot of PTSD and a lot of residue from like my old ways, and undealt with issues, right? So my wife she had left, I was in the house and I was calling her, but she didn't pick up the phone. Now I'm calling her and calling her and calling, and she's not picking up. Immediately I start to my anxiety just rises up. At that time, I'm probably like 25 years old. And she came back, and my kids were about 2 years old, like 2 and 3 or 1 and 2. I don't remember, but they were walking. They were babies. And she walks in the house, and immediately I'm screaming like, "Where were you? Why you didn't answer my phone?" Because my mind, remember, I still haven't dealt with the loss of my mom. I don't know marriage. I knew we got married, but I don't know how to treat my wife. By the way, she was my high school sweetheart, but when you marry, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So I'm still learning. I'm still growing. And she walks in, and I'm screaming, and she's like, "Babe, I just went to get you a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich." And she hands it to me open, like out the aluminum foil. She's like, "Here."
Wow.
And I was so caught up that I grabbed the bacon, egg, and cheese and I threw it. And it hits the refrigerator. And that moment to me felt like slow motion, because in my mind, I'm like, what did I just do? Because it exploded. And my kids were watching, and my wife just looks at me and she walks out the door. Immediately I call my pastor, and I'm like, yo, like, I just messed up. In my mind, she's gonna leave me.
Right.
Because my environment before all this was, you just leave.
That's it. Yeah.
So I'm like, yo, I messed up. I can't believe I played myself like this. I could not control my emotions at the time. My pastor said, yo, your kids saw that? I was like, yeah, man, this is crazy. He was like, do me a favor. He said, hang up with me. You go to your kids, you hold them by their hands, you look at them in the eyes, and you say, hey, daddies are not supposed to treat mommy like that. And I did exactly what he said. And from that moment, if I ever was out of pocket, or I speak to my boys. So I said that long story just to kind of give you some where it all started. So shout out to Ken, because that was a pivotal moment for me in my growth as a dad and as a husband.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that. That's deep. I'm like, what? There's always I want fathers to know that you're never like, don't get me wrong, there are certain situations and relationships that do have to come to an end, I believe. But I also want to say out of the same mouth that there's always grace and forgiveness, because I feel like sometimes fathers feel like, I've gone too far. I'm out there already. So I'm going to just keep staying. Like they haven't been in their child's life. And so it's too late. That's what your story is reminding me of a little bit. But then, as Pastor Ken said, your children saw that.
Yeah.
They saw a real moment. Did they understand that? No, because they were young. But I love the advice that he gave to you. Go to them, tell them that this is not how daddy treats mommy. Yeah. This is not right? I was telling a father, one of my students' fathers, who said that he had a lot of, he was working a lot, but I could see that his child's behavior was affected by it. And my advice at the time, we were talking, I was just like, Lord, give me something to say to him. And I just was like, do you see him often? He was like, I work a lot, yada, yada, yada. And I said, can you just take 5 minutes to explain that to him? Like, if it's okay, I don't know your schedule, I don't know. If you can't see him, at least just pick up the phone and say, son, I'm not able to make it today. Or call him every day for 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and just say that. You know what I mean? There's always, but I feel like sometimes some people feel like, I'm already out there. I'm already gone. My son or my child does not want to hear from me, see me.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? I think, and I'm trying to understand because again, I can explain it from a biblical perspective, right? Like, yeah, there's restoration, there's forgiveness, there's long suffering, and there's hope, right? Like I don't think there's ever a moment where that's it. I wipe my hands and I just can't. I think as a dad, it's our responsibility to do everything that we can do to communicate love, restoration, forgiveness, and all of that encompassed into one, or just, love is kind, love is gentle, all of that stuff, understanding, right? And us as dads, as being just willing to be patient, because sometimes we want things in our time. So we'll wipe our hands and say, oh, I'm done. I've used those words, like, I'm done, not with my kids, but in principle, like, oh, I'm done. Are we really done, or are we just quitting or giving up? Now, when it comes to our kids, I don't think that should ever be the case. I believe, I believe, and I know there's situations that are really, really difficult out there. Somebody may be watching and say, dude, you don't know my situation. Right. But I know that I've seen God restore relationships that I never thought would be restored. My relationship with my own father is restored. I'm a 43-year-old man who had daddy issues all the way till I was like 30, 38. And not just that, and mind you, I'm having daddy issues, and I'm ministering to kids for 15 years straight, teenagers. I'm consoling them. Now that's a conflict right there. Conviction is crazy. I probably strayed from your question, but the short answer is like, yeah, go ahead.
No, you can finish answering, but you're segueing into I want you to explain more of how you guys came back together, how your father, how you guys restored that relationship to them.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny because we, again, the relationship has always been rocky, and it's funny because my father would hear about things that I said, right? And I'm like, man, that's crazy. He's like, oh, I heard you said this and this and this about me. Like, and it's always been bad things. Like, he wasn't there, he kicked me out the house, things like that, And once in a while I'll get those like phone calls, and I'm like, dude, like, what's, like, are you bugging? Like, I didn't respond the right way. So I'm being very transparent right now, right? Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and act like like my life is,
No, I
you
can't.
know, I'm just not that guy. You're gonna know the real me regardless. So I might as well be, right? So I'm like, nah, you crazy? Like, and it would spark like this thing in me because of course I was holding resentment toward him and, you know, yada, yada, yada. But there was a moment in 2012, it was probably like 2012, 2013, where I was like, man, I'm ministering to young people. I felt like God was like, yo, you got to fix this relationship.
Mhm.
And there was so many young people, like, you know, I was a youth pastor. So like we was getting tons of young people and with the same like issues, right? And I got convicted and then I called him and I was like, hey man, I just want to say I'm sorry because I haven't been the best son. I don't remember what else I said.
Yeah.
And he was like, his response was like, well, da da da. And he starts kind of like going hard. Like, I don't remember. It just I expected him to apologize.
Yeah.
And I hung up and I was like, I'm done with this dude. That kind of taps off to like, I'm done with this dude. Now, first of all, my heart wasn't right. I called him expecting an apology. I thought I was the one that got convicted. I thought I was the one that was supposed to just share. But again, you know, I'm maturing, right? I'm learning how to navigate through life, emotions, and all that. So boom, that happens. We're not cool anymore. I don't call him back. A few years later, in 2018, I get a phone call and he's like, oh, I heard you were saying, somebody told me, yo, your father's mad. He heard you said this and that. And I'm like, what? Like, first of all, my kids are teenagers already. I'm in, you know, I have a fairly decent job. I'm traveling. I was working for YouTube at the time.
Mhm.
You know, I felt like I was pretty much established within my career and growing. Um, in the church, loving on Jesus. My family is doing well. I felt like things were. I'm like, what?
Yes. No, I hear you.
Right? So, mind you, I've been married for I'm going on 18 years with my high school sweetheart. We've been together for 23 in total. I just had to throw that so back.
Ah, I love that. Yeah.
So anyway, so I call him, and now I'm mad. I call him. I'm like, man, what's the problem? And he's like, oh, well, you said, I said, did they tell you that I said, and I'm like, did they tell you that I said that I'm the man that I am today because of you? Did they tell you that I said that, man, I understand why we went through what did, and it was silent. Boom. So I said, why don't we stop and just, I'm gonna call you back. So I end up calling him back and we the relationship started to build slowly. And then we end up just connecting because he didn't see my kids grow up.
Yeah.
So my kids spent 13, 14 years without seeing their grandfather.
Yeah.
So you know, we reconnected and boom, like it's just been amazing. Every week we FaceTime one another. And I told him, I said, you know, man, I'm sorry. Like I don't want us to be like this anymore. I said, you know, because of you, I said, I've learned work ethic. I learned, you know, I learned how to be here for my family because of you.
Mm.
You know, and I said, I just want to thank you for that. I didn't expect an apology from him. I do believe that there was a lot of things that he didn't deal with the right way, but it's all right. And we were together one day in his house. It was my wife, my kids, him, his wife, and his wife. I call her my mother because she raised me.
Mm.
Um, we were speaking, and then he made a comment. He said something along the lines of like, you know, we live and we learn.
Yeah.
We live in, and to me, that was his way of apologizing.
Yeah.
Right. And I see the smile on his face when he sees my boys. You know, I speak to him about things that I'm going through in life now as a 40-year-old, as a 43-year-old, and we're able to have these conversations. And you know, he's a 67-year-old man, so he's stuck in some ways. I'm not here to argue with him and try and change his mind. I'm here to let him know, like, yo, I'm rocking. My family's intact. We love the Lord. I'm working, and we good. And I'm operating in my calling. I'm operating in the gift that God's given me, and that's to speak to young people. In fact, if you look right here, I keep a picture of me and him.
Wow.
Right on my board.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Like I
No,
was
don't make me cry.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one more time. So that's me and him.
I love
That's me as a baby.
Wow.
Like, look, right? And I keep that picture here because my father was a dope dude. Like my father had a rough life. Like, him and my mom's, they broke up, and I know it devastated him to not have me in his life every single day, because my father's a hardworking man, 2-3 jobs just to make sure like he made enough money to give me whatever I wanted. Like, so I believe one of my father's love languages is like giving. My father likes to give. So it's like, Chino needs a pair of sneakers. Boom, he gives me the sneakers. But during the time when I first went to live with him, I just needed hugs. I just needed somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And he didn't understand that. And I don't blame that on him because of how he was raised and stuff like that. And it was just a new environment. So fast forward to today, we sit down, we watch the game, basketball, baseball, and we just chill. And sometimes we don't agree.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, as we grow up, and as we mature, right? Because growing up and maturing, that's two different things, right? Mm-hmm. So as we grow and mature, it's like, wait up, I don't always need to be right. And honestly, I even practice that with my kids, right? Just because I'm dad, right? I understand the whole, like, I'm the father, you respect me, I get that. But there's times when I'm not right. And if I've opened up conversation with my kids, again, respect is the key. If I've opened up conversation with my kids, I don't force my opinions unless it's fact. Then I'm forcing stuff like, this is fact, this is solid, this is what it is. Yeah. But I make sure that we have these conversations so that we can learn how to be great communicators. Yeah. Because I believe when we don't understand how to communicate, and when we don't listen, when we're like quick to like say something, or we're listening with the intent to respond, then there's a problem. And I've learned how to deal with that and navigate through that, with my own father. So that's been a major key to say, like, with my pops, like we just communicate. And my bad, I could keep going. So let me slow down.
First of all, I'm like, Chino, does he know I'm a new interviewer? Like, because this is so good. I'm like, oh my God, I want to say something about that. But I was out while you were talking about just how your relationship has transformed. You could have been the teenager or the child that was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. Because I know relationships like that. And I wanted to say it to my father, who's no longer with us, at times. And I thought I was. But there was something there. Like, why weren't you that person? Why weren't you that guy, that teenager that was? Because it seems like, no, you were angry, right? Mm-hmm. There were times where you just didn't understand probably why your father was this way and why your relationship was like that. But you were the one who would reach out, who gave. I would, in a sense, you gave the grace, which helped, transform and change the relationship to a certain extent. So mm-hmm. Why weren't you that person?
Man, damn, I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't even look at it. You're right. I never looked at it that way. I think I believe, as I'm thinking about it, I believe with my whole heart, God has called me for something greater than, I don't even know. Like, I don't know, but I know that God's allowed me to see so much, and He has surrounded me with like individuals who are, are just amazing mentors. Yeah. My pastor being one of them. Just hearing that the word of God, I think, I've sat under this word for 17 years. Like, grace is key, so maybe I believe that's why, the word is a seed planted in a man's heart. So I believe that just sitting under that word, it would bring me to that place where I'm like, well, that's as a man. As a teenager, I just always felt that I don't know. I just always felt like something was missing. I know now it was God. But I always felt like something was missing. I lived on my own since I was 16 years old. So I always felt like something, even though I had some great times, some fun times back in the day. I'm not going to lie. Like, you living on your own at 17, 18, 19. Life is always spring break, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So.
I mentioned before we started recording that my niece and nephew, so I met Chino at a youth conference. I believe you were the speaker for the last day.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. And that year, my niece and nephew, who were about 16 and 17 at the time, that was their first time being introduced to crew and fast break. And so I just remember my niece and nephew saying that they really enjoyed you speaking. Myself, what stood out to me was your testimony about your father. I can't pinpoint everything, but I remember while you were talking, I was like, God is going to do something with that relationship. And I can't wait. First of all, I said that God is going to do something with that relationship. I want to hear how God transforms that, right? I didn't know you. I didn't know, I met you that fast break. I don't even think I knew that I would eventually run back into you years later.
Yeah.
Where the relationship had actually changed, right?
Yeah.
So maybe last summer, I ran into Amy, who is your wife's cousin, right?
Yep.
And you're married to Rebecca. And I'm like, oh yes, I want to know how the relationship with his dad. And you ended up telling me that you guys have restored your relationship. I was like, God is so good.
Yeah.
Yes. So my niece and nephew, like I said, definitely, I guess they resonated with the story, your testimony. And in my head, I'm like, of course, anybody would have wanted you guys to restore that relationship much earlier. But who knows why the length? Who knows?
Yeah.
You had to mature to who you are. Sometimes we expect God to do things a certain way, right? Yeah, the father is supposed to reach out to the child. The father is supposed, but sometimes it's different. Like you were in a place in God where you wanted to just let things go. It's like, I'm here.
Yeah.
It looks different, right? Like I said, the father is usually the one to go to the son or the daughter, or that's what we expect. But God uses who he wants. Like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just catching so much, like, as we're speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about the prodigal son, right? He came to his senses and then went back, right? And the father saw him from afar. So, as we began, like, our relationship and the reconciliation part, it just, at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this because I know my personality.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 0 to 100 really quick, right? My dad he's not 0 to 100, but he's going to stand where he stands wherever he's at in his, opinion or whatever the case may be. So at first I was like treading lightly.
Wow.
Our conversations were very surface.
Mm-hmm.
And up until recently, we just had a conversation that was tense.
Wow.
And it bothered me. This is the first time I speak about it. It bothered me. Like, it brought some things up that I thought were like buried, and I remember I'm in the car with my wife and I'm like, yo, you heard what he said? You heard how he said it? And she was like, nah, I was talking to your mom. And I was like, oh man, that got me tight. But I didn't handle it. I didn't show him that I was upset.
Yeah.
And what I did was I just sat with it and I was like, you know what? Like, man, like, it's all good. Water under the bridge. It is what it is. I'm just so grateful to have my relationship with him. Like, I'm not gonna allow the enemy or some small little word to trigger something that I gotta deal with. It's my responsibility. as a believer. It's my responsibility as a man, to be able to navigate through those emotions and to be able to control those emotions, and to forgive. You use the word forgive right earlier, like, because forgiveness for me wasn't easy. Like, I was the guy back in the day. I hold grudges. I cut you off. You're done to me. I'll pull out what you did in 1982 and be like, this is why I don't mess with you. So that was a process for me as well.
Yeah. Reminds me of just quickly, I always, of course, doing these interviews and convos with fathers, it makes me, of course, think of my father, who we had a very rocky relationship, but I loved my dad. Like, I loved my dad. And probably like you, something very angry at times, and then very loving, like trying to understand why he was the way he was and why did you do that. And we used to have, like, I personally used to have like these screaming matches sometimes when I would talk to him. And I remember in 2016, the last time I saw him, before he died in 2017, I was like, God, what do I do? I'm tired. Like, I'm tired. Like, what do I do? Like, because I feel like I'm raising him. In a sense. And the Lord was like, all I want you to do is love him. That's it. I was like, okay, so you want me to get this and do this? And he was like, no. All I want you to do is love him. I was like, all right, I guess. That's how. But you know what? Like, that was all he needed. I can't change him. I couldn't. I thought I could. I was trying to find ways. He had an addiction problem. And I was like, I need to figure this out. And Lord was like, I'll do that. Just love him. Be his daughter. Listen to him. Support him. Whatever. Just love him.
Wow.
So
powerful.
Yeah. This is good. This is good. I'm a lift this up a little bit. I know we've been talking about some very like deep inner things, but I'm gonna change it a little bit. What are some joys that you get from raising your sons?
Joy, so many. Goodness, I mean, I think so every night. Listen, I could mention so many great things, but I will say this: every night, my boys come to my bedroom, right? And we joke in my home. We joke on each other because I come from the '90s where everybody, we cut on each other. Like, if you in a circle, you cut each other up. And and people who don't know what that means, that's like you make fun of each other, but it's cool. Right. Like, right? And I know, like, we live in a time where there's a lot of sensitivity, and I try to combat that with my son. So we cut on each other, and it's really cool. It's fun. But they come into my room every night, like, without fail. I don't call them, and they just talk about the day with me and my wife. And I think, to me, that's one of the joys, like, just to know that they come in and they'll come in and just talk to me about anything. And it's really cool. I know it's super practical, not super lavish, but it's just that nighttime bedroom talk is really cool.
That's good. That's good. So your father has developed a relationship with them as well?
Yeah.
Right? How does that look with all four of you?
It looks like legacy. It looks like generational, just joy. No curses on this end. It looks like growth. It looks like forgiveness. It looks like restoration. It looks like progression.
Yeah, I like that. You mentioned, well, actually, I'll take a look for that one. So with legacy, right? I feel like there's tangible legacy, right? And then there's like spiritual, right?
Yeah.
What's the most important piece of advice that you've given your sons?
As a man thinks, so is he.
As a man thinketh, so is he.
Yes.
That's scripture, y'all.
Yeah.
So why that?
Because they're boys who will be turning into men. And I believe with my whole heart that our lives are shaped by our thoughts. And in scripture, the Bible does tell us to renew our mind. The Apostle Paul says, renew your mind daily. And the reason why is because, science has figured it out after God and Paul, but we have upwards of 80,000 thoughts, and 80% of that is negative. And My boys are growing up in a time where there's a lot of chaos,
Yes, yeah.
and they need to have a strong foundation, again, based on my belief system, which is rooted in my faith in Christ. I believe that if their thoughts are in line, they'll always have a positive outlook on whatever it is that they go through. And when they go through things that just seem like treacherous or turmoil or just any type of trial, they'll have that that stamina built up in them that says, I know that this something good is going to come out of this. So I'm prepping them for those moments, because everything ain't always going to be peaches and cream.
Mm-hmm.
Hashtag 112 if you're part of the
Yeah.
90s.
If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So what other ways are you leaving? So a legacy obvious is important to you.
Yeah.
What other ways are you leaving legacy for you?
Is showing them what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Saying yes to the call of God on my life, and they see how I speak to their friends. Their friends know me because I run basketball tournaments. So everybody who knows them knows me. I'm the guy who runs tournaments and stuff like that. So they see how I serve God.
Yeah.
They see how I serve people. That's just not me, that's their mom. So that's big. It's about people. We're here to serve people. We're here to show people the love of Christ. So
I'm all for people leaving tangible things for legacy.
of course, generational wealth and
wealth, right? What you guys are doing. What do you say to the father who just feels like I don't have money. I don't have it. Is there a way to leave legacy still if you don't, I guess, quote unquote, have it to give? Is there other ways to influence and yeah, I would say that leave legacy in other ways.
in other ways outside of the material?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think words are powerful, right? Mm-hmm. The tongue has the ability to bless and to curse. I remember a time when my father, when I was young, my father would say something to me. I'm tired of you, man. I'm tired of you. Mm. And I don't think he meant it like go away, but right. I processed it as a young boy,
right,
who just lost his mom, who feels like love is conditional. I processed it like, this dude don't want me, like straight up. So words are powerful. So for the father who thinks you can, a word goes such a long way. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm believing in you. My son comes home and today he sent me a text. He's like, yo, dad, I bench pressed 170 for 5 times. Yo, that's amazing, bro. Man, you're doing so good. I could have been like, dude, well, you've been in the gym for the past year. You should be benching that, right? But I was like, nah, you doing good. Yo, I'm proud of you, bro. And he came home and he was hyped. And so words are powerful. I think, remember, words, there's so much power, right? There's so much power in a word. Anybody that's watching, think of that time when somebody said that one thing to you that till this day, when you think about it, it makes you feel some type of way. It's a word. So as fathers, we're not going to be perfect, right? I always tell my kids this, guys, I know I'm going to mess up on you, but always know, if you feel it, if you feel like I messed up on you, just tell me, because I don't want that to be unresolved issues within you. Because the reality is this, I'm gonna keep it real. God has blessed me with just with jobs and being in position where leaders would see me in jobs. And there were times where I messed up, I delayed some moments because I was so like, I was learning how to deal with so much that I would lash out on like a manager, right? And this is the same dude that's trying to help me level up. And I want my kids to understand, like, how to learn how to deal with their emotions. Because the problem right now is they're like, now it's not a problem, but they're young, but they're going to grow into men. And there's nothing worse than that 30, 40-year-old guy who does not know how to control his emotions. Now, we can't always blame them because within the Black and Latino community, we haven't had strong images for many, many reasons. Right? Yeah. Many reasons. And we can't blame that young boy who's out there just trying to live. He's trying to live, right? He's in that fight mode, fight or flight. He's in fight mode all the time. He's like the pit bull. I hate to put it like this, that has been just beat up, and then they lash out, and then it's like, oh, look at this, that's a bad dog. No, that's not. And I'm not trying to compare dog to human, but just to give you like some visualization, and I hope that that's not offensive to anybody. I'm just trying to say, like, words are powerful, so we have to train young men to grow up and grow up in a way where they know how to control those senses. Man, I'm mad, I'm about to lash out. Yo, I'm tight, I'm about to swing on this dude. Because that was me. Yeah. It was like, you said something to me, I'm swinging on you. No, that's not the way. You said something to me, it didn't sit right with me. Yo, let's have a conversation about this. This is how I felt. Because that's what it is. I know I start going. Jess, I'm
good. No, they need to hear it. People, men, fathers, they need uncles, whoever, they need to hear it. And
yeah.
As you're talking, I'm just like, it's so amazing how you said this earlier. You don't want to use the word broken, but the relationship with your father and it was broken. But how God still used you to speak to young men and young women, like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. I bug out. And yeah, and I mentioned that because I'm like, the relationship ain't broken. We broken. People, we broken. We're fragmented on the inside because we had, like, for me, I had those were issues that were undealt with. Like, there were areas in my heart that God was still working in. And yeah, on this side, I'm chilling. I'm in ministry, and and I'm in career-wise, I'm moving. On this side, I'm like, I'm falling still. I'm still in the same place. Okay. And I had to come to a place where I made a choice to say, you know what? No more. And as fathers, it is our responsibility, because our kids, they model us. So many times I hear people say, my wife will tell me, man, he's just like you, babe. But she's talking about one of my sons. Yeah. And I'm like, yo, that's dope. I love it. Yeah, he is just like me. Sometimes he gets mad and he just gets tight. I get mad, I get tight. And then, but then there's times he'll sit back and think about something that you said, and he'll sit with you and have a conversation. I'm a conversationalist. Yeah. I like to talk because for so many years I didn't like to talk. So
that's good. We're gonna, as we close, sound like a sermon, as we conclusion. This is not on, it kind of is, but I want you to kind of speak to two people. I want you to give an encouraging word. Like, what would you say to a son who feels, who probably doesn't have a father at this point? He of course he has a father, but no one in his life right now. And it's kind of just, probably being raised by a mother or a grandma, maybe an uncle, but who is missing a father right now in their lives. And then I want you to speak to the father, to any father. It could be the father that is trying, who needs to step up, and who's doing the right thing right now. So
yeah. Yeah. So to the son who doesn't have a dad, that's a tough place to be in. And it's easy for me to sit here and tell you, like, yo, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna, if you just you could do whatever you put your mind to. But the reality is that there is a longing on the inside of us for our dads. Mm-hmm. But I will tell the young person, just continue to keep your head up. and know that there is someone out there that is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my belief is that Jesus is for us, and life isn't always perfect, and sometimes we go through things like not having a dad in our life. But what if that could turn around? What if God is using that for us to learn some things, to teach some things? I don't know, and maybe the young person don't even want to hear that right now, because it's like, dad, like, I'm looking at your shirt. Ironically, you're wearing a Pac shirt on Biggie's birthday, right? Two men who had no fathers. Today
Right.
is B.I.G.'s birthday,
Yes.
right? Two men who had no fathers, right? And one of those men, Pac, look, he was out there like he was a gangster / advocate, and the other was just trying to come out the hood. I don't know what he was, right? But these men, at the end of the day, their environments were so strong that they couldn't get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as a young person, that doesn't have to be your story, right? Because yes, these individuals go down in the history of hip hop, but they didn't reach their full potential.
Yeah.
But as a young person, if you continue to trust that God is for you, I promise, if you continue to trust that God is for you, you can reach your full potential in Him, and He'll work through you, and you'll never know what could happen. And for the father, it's tough to be a dad. I've thrown egg sandwiches, like I said. I've punched the wall, like I've said, in my immaturity. I haven't always been there for my kids, right? And as a father, we deal with the present, but we also deal with the past. And then we deal with what society says, or who society says we should be, versus who we think we need to be, and versus the truth, which is who God says we are. But my encouragement to the dad is continue to keep your head up as well. Continue to do what you do. Continue to trust that everything is going to work out. And if you put your trust in the Lord, again, it's the same, because at the end of the day, that's what I truly believe. If you put your trust in God, that He'll work all things out for the good of those who love Him and are called.
So good, Chino. I can't wait to listen to this again. Yeah. So yes, today is Biggie's birthday.
I had to throw that in there.
No. Shout out to Brooklyn.
That's right.
Spread love the Brooklyn way, right?
That's right.
So when I'm going out after this, but I wore this. I was like, should I wear this on? Should I not? I was like, let me just wear it, right? And the first thing that came to mind was his Dear Mama song. Right? He has a Dear Mama song. And I said, I don't know, and I'm not a huge following of Tupac, but a follower of Tupac, but he spoke some truth sometimes. And then of course he wrestled with a lot of different things, right? But I said, I never heard him, I don't know, me personally, I never heard him talk about his father. Unless there's an interview out there or something written or in a rap, but I have never. And so in my head, I was like, this interview could speak to the child in him. Like there's a person that feels like him. There's a son out there that's like him. So no, I just appreciate everything that you gave to this conversation.
Thank you.
I want fathers to know, I want you to know that I'm holding back a lot of tears, because I love relationship. I don't know why God made me this way. I really don't. I don't understand it. But I understand. It makes my heart, I get joy when I can see fathers and sons together, or fathers and daughters, or mothers and daughters, and mothers and sons, and any type of relationship. I love connection. And so I'm just happy that you spoke to just being authentic in your relationship, being transparent about your relationship with your dad. That was at one point good, but then there was nothing there going on. There was no communication. And then how God just kind of restored and reconciled you guys. Is that reconciliation? Reconciliation.
Yeah.
And I know, like, not, I think, I know someone will be blessed by this.
Amen.
I know they will. And so, yes, Chino, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this conversation. I really do appreciate it. Shout out to Rebecca and your two boys. And yeah, I
Thank you.
will. Yeah, guys, that is all. Crew, thank you so much for going on this journey with us regarding fatherhood. I pray that someone will be blessed and touched by every single conversation. Yeah, so Chino, enjoy your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed one.